welcome to the 2021 annual meeting of the Board of New Jersey Highlands Coalition. This is our 33rd year of work in support of the Highlands and possibly our best year ever. I'm Mark Lobauer, President of the Board of Trustees, and I want to thank you for joining us today. Each fall, the Highlands Coalition holds this meeting to celebrate the achievements of the past year, to acknowledge our heroes, our members who have gone above and beyond to accomplish our goals, to seed our future by distributing grants to several member organizations, and to determine our leadership for the upcoming year. This is always a happy occasion, a chance to enjoy the fellowship of old friends that share a common bond. And let me remind you all, we are bound together by our mission, which is to protect, enhance, and promote the vital water and other natural and cultural resources of the New Jersey Highlands. In this past year, we've had many successes pursuing that mission. We're particularly proud of our collaboration with our member organizations in opposing the proliferation of warehouses in protected Highlands areas, in fighting the rise of solar farms in green spaces rather than in improved areas, and in taking a strong stand with regard to the state's forestry management policy. Much work lies ahead on all these issues, and in particular with regard to the forestry management policy, but we can be proud of the fact that a set of disastrous bills that had been advancing through the state legislature and looked like they were going to pass this year have instead been set aside by their sponsor, thanks to our work and while we negotiate better forestry policy. So we have a lot to be proud of for our work this year. There have been some changes. We've lost some faithful staffers over the past year, and I'd like to gratefully acknowledge the good work of Kathy Hungerford, who retired 1 year ago this month, George Stafford, who you'll be hearing about a little later on from Julia, and Juniper Leiper as well. Thank you very much for the work that you did to advance our organization. We've always had a dynamic, capable team of staffers, and I'm happy to report that we've brought 2 new staffers on board this year who are extremely talented. Brielle Olshan as manager of membership and administration functions, and Joe Hernandez as policy assistant and the Lopatcon Creek Initiative program manager. If you haven't met them yet, you should. They're really terrific people. Okay, and we have also seen some changes to our board. Some of our members are rotating off today, and new ones are being brought forward. We'll be recognizing some of our departing trustees later. We'll also be recommending a slate of trustee candidates for election later today, who we're very proud to recommend to you. These are people who are proven environmental leaders with a passion for the protection of the Highlands. This slate of candidates also reinforces the commitment of this organization to diversity. So again, welcome to all of you. Thank you for participating today as we celebrate our successes and build the future of the New Jersey Highlands Coalition. And now I'd like to introduce to you our Executive Director, Julia Summers.
Thank you very much, Mark. I really appreciate it. Mark is a great chairman of our board, and we are very lucky to have him as our leader. So, as Mark has shared, it has been a remarkable year. At the start of our last fiscal year in mid-2020, we were still in the throes of a worldwide pandemic, which has yet to end. But against the odds, the New Jersey Highlands Coalition has found ways to thrive and continue to fulfill our mission. The past 12 months have seen us focus on many things, but in particular, we've been assisting grassroots groups, although some more than others, opposing giant warehouse proposals in Franklin Warren, in White Township, in Lopatcon, Pohatcong, and Phillipsburg. Did you know that one of the 2 warehouses proposed in White Township would be, if it's built, would be the 7th largest warehouse in the country? And that's saying something. It's over half a mile long, and it would be built 12 miles from I-80 and 10 miles from Interstate 78 on a 2-lane county road that runs through in one direction, runs through the historic village of Hope, and the road has no shoulders. It's nuts. We've been opposing the new hot development proposals for solar power plants on agricultural soils, particularly in Harmony Township in Warren County. We've been opposing a massive development at the headwaters of the Wallkill River in Franklin Borough, Sussex. We've been opposing the redevelopment of we've been supporting our member organization who are opposing a redevelopment of a formerly unused quarry in Bethlehem Township. We've been supporting other grassroots and larger groups across the region in multiple ways. On forestry issues, we've been particularly opposing the 5 bad forestry bills that Mark mentioned that were up in the state legislature, providing sound science and community opposition to defeat them. And I have to share that we were quite pleased with the campaign video blast we produced and shared, explaining to the public what the problems are with those bills. It was made for us with the help of Plug-in Digital Media, who I am happy to plug. We felt the video was impactful and hit the mark. It was widely shared and watched. We've been working to promote stormwater utilities, particularly in the communities in and around Lake Apacong, which need them in the worst way. We've been building green infrastructure and rain gardens in the Delaware watershed. We've been participating in a great group opposing building of a natural gas compressor station in West Milford. We've been seeking to amend and strengthen environmental rules, which you're going to hear about shortly, through our work with legislators and regulators in Trenton. We've been launching a whole series of webinars, all to be found on our YouTube channel. Just Google YouTube New Jersey Highlands Coalition, and you will now find an extensive library of archived workshops and webinars on cultural and environmental issues, and even a fun one on the tricks of wildlife photography. We made an important 30-minute film, The Way of the Ramapo, about Chief Vincent Mann, our trustee, about his turtle clan, and about the Ramapo tribe's traditions and customs. We've been attending and commenting at all the Highlands Council's meetings and participating in the Highlands Sustainable Economic Study, which is being released soon. There will be a workshop on that at the conference. We conducted the second Northwest New Jersey Rivers Conference last November, all of which workshops can be found archived on our YouTube channel. Check it out. You won't be disappointed. The third Northwest New Jersey Rivers Conference is coming up November 9th and November 10th. They'll be virtual again. It's a half day each time, in the afternoon on the 9th and the morning of the 10th. And you'll hear lots more about it before then. And again, we are fortunate to have great speakers and a first-rate keynote speaker in Pete Kasabak of New Jersey Future. Please check it out and join us for that conference. We've been taking educational programs into schools and libraries in the Delaware watershed, supported by the William Penn Foundation's Delaware River Watershed Initiative, putting on great events like our first hike-a-thon, our annual golf outing, 2 car treks, which are becoming seriously popular, 2 juried Highlands art exhibits. The second is being hung almost as we speak on Main Street in a new gallery space in Boonton. And we have a brewery tour coming up in Hackettstown, all of it outside on November 6th. So we hope you will join us then. We're also getting back into leading great hikes and Highlands tours. And of course, all the important work that goes on with the support of our board committees and a great board chaired by Mark Lobauer. A very active policy committee that meets monthly, chaired by George Casa, and an extremely hard-working Natural Heritage Committee chaired by John Fanay. Phew, and that's not even all of it, but it's all I have time to talk about right now. And we do this with only 6 people on staff, which is remarkable, I think. How? Because they are fabulous people, and we are an awesome team. Our coalition members also support us and help make this possible, and we cannot thank them enough. So at this point, Mark mentioned that George Stafford has retired. And I would like to take a minute to recognize somebody that you have all come to know well and maybe even loved. George, are you there? You can unmute yourself. If Mark can do that for you, there you go. Okay,
Yes.
so you can interrupt me, George, if you want, and I suspect you probably will. George is someone you've all come to know well and maybe even loved. He is charming, funny, and a irascible character who spent 12 years working in either his third or fourth career, I'm not quite sure, but he spent that career with us at the New Jersey Highlands Coalition. He is and was a great team member, someone who liked to challenge us all to see things sometimes through municipal eyes, because he had great experience doing that, through a progressive point of view, which some people sometimes felt like strangling him over. Sometimes with an ad man's perspective, always reminding us that, he had that experience and, we had to listen to him because he knew what he was talking about. With that fabulous personality and great character, he was telling us how we could get things done. George and his wife, Paula, are moving to New England. Note, I did not say New Hampshire, George, or Vermont, to be closer to family, and they will be hugely missed in the New Jersey Highlands. In New Jersey, because a lot of people know George, and in Wharton, where they have lived most of their lives and where George served as mayor and on the council. I don't know what they're going to do without you, George, in Wharton.
There's plenty of elected officials up there who are happy to do without me.
George, we love you and we already miss you. And we thank you so much for everything that you have done for the New Jersey Highlands Coalition and for the New Jersey Highlands. People don't know how much they're going to miss you. Good luck, and please come back to the golf outing every year. It wouldn't be the same without you.
Well,
So
I intend to be back in the spring. I'll probably be back, monthly for all my various pals like Mr. Hyler, Mrs. Hyler, and all the other people that we know and love. Yeah, I ran out of gas. That's it. I just, there was just too much stuff. I think you guys have done a great job. This whole Zoomy thing is not my style. So, but thank you for all the fun I had with you people and all the great people that I met in our organization and through our organization. And yes, that was some bump on my head. I managed to bonk myself getting out of my car when I had a whole pile of sheetrock on top of the car. There's not much give in a whole pile of sheetrock, as I found out. No, thank you for everything that you've done for me and all the fun that I had dealing with this sort of stuff. Motor vehicle only went so far. I mean, I had great pals there, but that was it. So thank you all very much. You've been great to me, and I appreciate it. And you gave Hyler something to do too. So
well, Hyler, believe it or not, is on our legacy council, and we'll try and make sure that we keep giving Hyler things to do.
oh yeah.
You too, Linda.
Thanks.
He's
Thank
about
you
to go
very
hide in
much,
his
George.
backyard here,
Okay, very good luck. So, and now
Thank you.
Mark Lobauer is going to present the 2021 Capstone Award to Cindy McGonigal.
Oh, you gave it away. Thank you, Julia. Yes, I am really honored to present our 2021 annual Capstone Award, which is the highest form of recognition that our organization provides to a person that I admire tremendously, and I'm really proud to have as a friend, Cindy McGonigal. Cindy's career is distinguished for its passion, excellence, and devotion to enhancing the environment. She's a retired teacher. You know, teachers are special people. They care about seeding the future. She taught social studies in the Westfield Public School District, and she received a Governor's Teacher of the Year award for her work. So that tells you a lot about her devotion. Cindy was a founding trustee of the Musconetcong Watershed Association. So it's one thing for us to work hard with these organizations we belong to. Cindy is actually one of those people who started an organization, got it founded and got it going. And we all know how successful MWA is today. So that's in large part thanks to Cindy. She's also served on the boards of ANJEC, the Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissions, of course, the Musconetcong Mountain Conservancy, and for many years on our own board of trustees. And she served as chair of our Natural Heritage Committee also for many of those years. Cindy's also a master gardener, so she puts her hands and her head into the job as well. She heads up the native planting project at the Musconetcong Water Association's River Resource Center. And to show just how much she loves the outdoors, she spends a lot of time fly fishing, kayaking, and birding along the Musconetcong. And she's been a past chair of the Bethlehem Township Environmental Commission. But now, after many years of service to us in the region and on the Highlands Coalition, Cindy's moving out of state, moving up to Connecticut, although she does still hope to remain active with the coalition through a remote connection. So Cindy, we just wanted to say, as we convey this Capstone Award to you, that we all love you. There it is. And we wish you well. We're so grateful for all the service that you've given us, for the inspiration that you have been to us, and for the guidance that you so gratefully shared. So Cindy McGonigal, our Capstone Award winner. Cindy,
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for those kind words. It may appear as though I'm in a witness protection program. I'm actually just in Connecticut. I've been very privileged to work with many outstanding individuals at the Highlands Coalition for over 20 years, even before the coalition was created after the passage of the Highlands Act in 2004. When I was teaching in Westfield, I'd come out to Bamboo Brook for late afternoon meetings at the New Jersey Conservation Foundation, when many of the same people who are still around now would vociferously debate and advocate their positions to ensure that this legislation was passed. They were then, and still are now, extremely passionate, experienced, and dedicated. The coalition has always been blessed with effective leadership and talented staff, as well as with a plethora of knowledgeable trustees and members of grassroots organizations. It's those small groups fighting off constant threats to the Highlands that are the backbone of the organization. They're the boots on the ground that alert us to problems and work effectively with the coalition to ensure that the region is protected. It's truly been a pleasure to work alongside and learn from all these committed people that work tirelessly to preserve the Highlands resources, particularly its forests that are the source of our plentiful clean water. I thank you for affording me this splendid opportunity for all these years. Thank you, Mark and Julia.
Thank you, Cindy. You're terrific. All right, and moving on in our agenda, we come to what I think is the highlight of our program. We have a fascinating speaker for you this afternoon who's going to be talking about the most urgent environmental problem of our time, the climate crisis. Dr. David Robinson is a distinguished professor of science at Rutgers University. He's also the New Jersey State Climatologist. He was educated, got his Bachelor of Science at Dickinson College, and then his master's and doctorate degrees from Columbia University. Dr. Robinson describes himself as an earth scientist, more specifically a physical geographer and climatologist. His research interests run the spatial gamut from global to local, with an underlying theme being the development of a better understanding of the climate system. As New Jersey State Climatologist, he conducts research of an applied nature that focuses on diverse weather and climate of the Garden State. This includes topics such as climate change, drought, flooding, and issues involving agriculture, transportation, public safety, and commerce. And to demonstrate this today, he'll be speaking to us on the subject of climate change in the Highlands of New Jersey. So welcome, Dr. Robinson, and we've been looking forward to hearing your talk.
Mark, thanks very much for the very kind introduction, and greetings to everyone from the campus. We're back on campus. My mask is over here, but my door is closed, so I don't have to put it on. But it's great to be back on campus and see students in person and colleagues as well. But it's nice to have this opportunity to speak with you folks as well. So that's just terrific. And Julia, thank you for the invitation. George, congratulations. Cindy as well. And then friends and family online, Janet and Lynn, and you know who you are. So greetings. Let me get my screen started here. First slide you see there is a satellite image, but it's an odd perspective. You're actually looking from New York City over to the northwest, and you can see the highlands in their dark green, rich foliage, and all the water bodies enhanced by human damming and such, and natural from glacial period, sitting there over the wonderful, wonderful highlands. Moving on, greetings from the Office of the State Climatologist. We're here at Rutgers. I'm appointed 30 years ago, Ida. That's the way I look at it now. It was September 1st was Ida, and it was my 30th anniversary as state climatologist. And believe me, I had no intention of celebrating that way. It was just a horrible, horrible, tragic day actually for the state. But I have had the opportunity to be your state climatologist now for 30 years, appointed through a dean here at Rutgers, indirectly via decree of Governor Byrne back in the late 1970s, who said state climatologists should be situated at the state university. So anyway, we're here to help everyone. We're here to help people make decisions. We're not going to make the decisions for you, but we'll give you the information and the expertise on weather and climate to help you make those decisions. And that could be whether you're going to go out on a hike and look at our weather network, check that out, or it could be the data that was being provided to the governor just weeks ago during the height of the tragic flash flooding associated with the arrival of Ida. So we cover all aspects of weather and climate. Now, to the climate of the highlands and of the state. We're a pretty precipitation-rich state, and there's no place richer in that resource than the highlands. You can see here, January precipitation, and the darker the green, the more that falls in a particular region of the state. And here's July precipitation. Might surprise you that July is wetter than January. We just don't have much evapotranspiration occurring in January, so you can wallow in the mud, but not necessarily in the summer where we can dry out pretty quickly. But the highlands is the wettest part of the state, climatologically speaking. But not always. And here we can see what Wanacue Reservoir looked like in the early 80s, led to the development or the formation of Monksville Reservoir, the last reservoir built in New Jersey upstream from Wanacue, following that rather severe drought. But what is it about the highlands that makes them so interesting climatologically and a really unique area in New Jersey? And here you can see a map David Ludlam, who wrote the Jersey Weather book back in '83, created. We've enhanced, and you can see the highlands up there in the Northwest, obviously, and what makes them different than the other climate regions of the state. And you can draw the boundaries wherever you want to. We geographers just love maps and putting boundaries and categorizing things. But when you look at it, it's the altitude, the higher altitudes of the northwest part of the state that make it a little cooler in the summer, colder in the winter. The deep valleys can get very cold with cold air drainage into them on calm, clear nights. Latitude. It's 2 degrees of latitude, but it's still 2 degrees of latitude between Cape May and the high point. And that can make somewhat of a difference as you cross the state. And here we're in the northernmost part. Surface conditions. Now that can be anything from urban environments to the suburbs, to the farmland, to the pinelands, and up to the rich forested hills and the farmed valleys of the northwest part of the state. The more vegetation you have, the more you can control temperatures through evaporation, and you're not heating up paved over surfaces and such and belching out a lot of heat from myriad of buildings. So we've got the more pristine surface conditions in the northwest part of the state. And then finally, we have land-water contrast. Not so much as you get further away from the water, and thus the highlands feel the least of the maritime effects in Jersey, which can lead to more extremes in temperature as opposed to the moderating influences of the adjacent waters of the Atlantic in coastal New Jersey. So really, for a small state, we have quite a rich variety of climate zones, and there's nothing more interesting and unique than the highlands. So I know your group is focused on very broadly, but oftentimes on water. It was mentioned earlier. How does the highlands get its precipitation in all those seasons and in that quantity? First of all, we have some seasonal storms, and primarily in the summer, thunderstorms come through. Sometimes they can stall and lead to devastating consequences, and this is one of the greatest of them. I'm going to be speaking with the Lake Capacon group later, I guess early this coming year. We haven't set a date yet, and it's going to be a delayed commemoration of the 20th anniversary of the 2000 flood. Just incredible amount of rain fell, over a foot, we believe, in some areas. I wish we had more instruments out at the time. In just hours, a thunderstorm complex that sat there and poured on this hilly terrain, flash flooding, landslides. The Lake Capacon itself flooded. It was quite a memorable event. So that's one way we get our rainfall up in the highlands. We get it from tropical systems as well, not necessarily a hurricane right on our doorstep, but sometimes, yes, sometimes a tropical storm, sometimes the remnants of a tropical system, such as we got from post-tropical storm Ida just last month. And here you can see a rainfall map we've put together for the state based on about 350 observations. And I'll tell you later how we got a lot of those observations. But here, zeroing in on the northern part of the state and the highlands, you can see the highlands were generally in an area of 5-6 inches of rainfall. Mind you, most of that fell within 6 hours. It was a little bit north of the heaviest zone that came from, well, the southern reaches or the southwestern reaches of the highlands, and made its way up, essentially Route 1, if you will, up into northeastern part of the state, where upwards of 6 to 9+ inches of rain fell, again, in 6 hours' time, which led to the tragic, primarily drowning deaths of 30 individuals, all within this zone of the heaviest rain, with 2-3 inch an hour rainfall events. But it's not as if the highlands escaped flooding and other issues associated with Ida. Mind you, average rainfall in September is about 4 to 4.5, about 4.5 inches in the highlands. So within an evening's time, all of September, an equivalent of September's rainfall accumulated in the highlands. And then finally, we have our low pressure systems that go through the Great Lakes or come up the coast as nor'easters. That'll give us our rains and our snows, primarily from early fall to mid-spring. Any day now, we might see a nor'easter come in here. We might see a storm, a tropical system combined with a developing nor'easter. Let's hope not, because that's what Sandy did on October 29th back in 2012. But here is, our snowfall from the big storm of last winter. And again, zeroing in on the northern part of the state, you can see 1.5 to 2.5 feet of snow was commonly observed in the highlands in a long-lasting and very prolific snow event. South of the Route 1 corridor there again, not nearly as much snow, but from there northwards, 1 to 2.5 feet of snow, or a little bit more than that, accumulated. So that's background of the climate of the highlands. But what's this thing about climate change? What's the big deal? Why is this so important? Why did I get asked to talk to you today? And this figure is really, really interesting, and it tells an interesting story. It's an annual graph put out on global risk landscape, missed the E there a little bit, from the World Economic Forum. And let me quickly go through this. Rising impact of events, both human-induced and natural, are on the y-axis. The lower x-axis is the likelihood. So low impact to high impact, low likelihood to high likelihood. And guess what is up there with among the highest impact and the highest likelihood? Climate action failure. Go down a little bit lower. This is extreme weather here. So you can see why this is such a critical situation, an emergency, many are calling it today, when it comes to extreme weather and climate change. So that's what is just so critically evident when you look at this figure. So what about the climate of the highlands? Well, if we go back 20,000 years ago, this is what it might have looked like up in the northern part of the state. An ice sheet coming out of the north with its terminus somewhere in northern New Jersey, carving out lakes and valleys and hilltops and dropping its load, if you will. In this case, glacial erratics in a very unique situation here at Tripod Rock up north of Boonton. If you haven't been there, and I bet you most of you have, it's a wonderfully unique geologic situation where that rock just dropped right out of the glacier as it melted and just perched itself on those 3 underlying stones. So that's the past. But the reason I wanted to show that is to give you the idea that climate has always been changing. It's been changing naturally, the way the Earth rotates around the sun. The Earth's axial tilt, volcanic eruptions, slight changes in solar activity, and over millions and billions of years, a change in the solar constant. All of these have led to natural variability of the climate system. But something's going on now that seems not to be able to be explained naturally. Climate change, it's happening, it's real, it's affecting New Jersey, and we're talking here over the last century, and in particular the last 50 years. So that says, and we'll show you some examples why it's happening. But then, of course, why is it happening? Humans are responsible for a significant portion of recent changes, and changes expected to occur in the future. There's absolutely no denying this. Theory, observations, and models all suggest this. The greenhouse theory, it's physics. You have to throw physics out the window to explain things otherwise. I'll show you some observations. We'll talk about models, our eyes into the future, just briefly. But if you paid attention to the news last week, it was a very exciting week for climatologists and climatology, because 2 climatologists were awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics. One of them, a Jersey resident for decades, Suki Minabe, former, essentially the father of climate modeling in the late 60s and early 70s down at NOAA's Geophysical Fluid Dynamics Lab in Princeton. Wonderful individual, brilliant individual, and an awfully nice person. I've known him for years. 20 years ago, I went to his retirement dinner, and he's still somewhat active. incredibly well-deserving and representative of the climate world, and recognition by the Nobel Committee and others that climate is an important part of science. And he was recognized with another German scientist from the Max Planck Institute for their understanding of complex systems. I should add an Italian physicist as well, because this is a complex system. But Suki, back with his early models, said, if we double the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, the Earth's temperature is going to rise about 2 degrees Celsius, 3.5, 4 degrees Fahrenheit. He said that back 50 years ago. And you know what? Far, far more sophisticated climate models today still give you about the same answer for the doubling of CO2. So just an amazing accomplishment, and speaks to the acceptance of climatology in the science world. I'm not going to have time to explain this greenhouse effect. Think of it as a blanket on the bed. The atmosphere as a natural greenhouse of carbon dioxide and water vapor and methane naturally found there. And it makes our planet habitable because it holds some of that yellow, the solar radiation coming in. It holds it for a while within the Earth atmosphere system before eventually releasing it out to space to get a balance between in and out. Well, we're out of balance. We're keeping more in the system and less going out. So we're warming our oceans and our atmosphere because we're enhancing this natural greenhouse through the combustion of fossil fuels, animal husbandry, rice farming, releasing methane, and natural gas production and such. And that increases temperatures of the atmosphere, which permit the atmosphere to retain more water vapor, which is a ubiquitous greenhouse gas, and off to the races we go. So that, in a nutshell, is the greenhouse effect. It's as if you put a blanket on your bed at night. It keeps you warmer, but the heat eventually escapes into your bedroom. You don't burst into flames. But if you're cold, you put another blanket on the bed and it holds that energy there a little bit longer. And that's essentially what humankind is doing to our environment, to our climate system. And we've been measuring carbon dioxide since the late 50s at Mauna Loa, on Big Island of Hawaii and elsewhere. And it's just inexorably going up, 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 up. Now well over 400 parts per million at levels not seen in at least a couple of million years. Pre-industrial, it was around 280 parts per million in the interglacial. But when that ice sheet was coming down in North Jersey 20,000 years ago, it was about 200. So ice sheet, 200 parts per million. Natural interglacial, 280. And now we're up to almost 420. And that's just one example of how we're polluting our atmosphere and creating that extra blanket within the atmosphere. What about observations? These are a time series of northern New Jersey, not just the Highlands, but a large chunk of it is the Highlands, Hunterdon, Somerset, Union County northward. This is a time series of temperatures from multiple stations averaged together since 1895. The blue line is a linear regression since 1980, just about the time we recognized a human component of climate change emerging from what clearly is a very noisy climate system. But about 1980 globally, we can look back and see we began to see a human signal emerging from the noisy climate system. And since then, temperatures have rocketed upwards, still with considerable variability. This was a Pinatubo volcano erupting and cooling things off. This was a major El Nino event in '98, another major one in 2012. So a lot of variability. But all on an upward trend. We're living at a higher foundational level, if you will. And anyone who only remembers this century has never lived through a year that would be considered average when you look back over the whole 20th century. That black line is the average essentially, well, from 1895 to 1980. So really quite a change as we see in Jersey, one of the faster warming states in the nation actually. And precipitation in northern New Jersey has increased as well. May not look all that impressive, 6 inches per century pace since 1980, but that's more than a month or a month and a half of extra precipitation a year. That's the pace we're on in New Jersey in the last 4 decades. And with that, notice the enhanced variability from year to year in the last 50 years, beginning with the great drought of the mid-1960s, compared to the first half of the 20th century. So we have to be prepared for drought. There's the 81 drought I showed you with Wanacue, but also the 2 wettest years of the last 125 plus years have occurred in the last decade, in 2011 and in 2018. So more variability and an upwards trend in precipitation. Then looking at drought, I pulled out 2 months here looking at drought. This is a drought hydrologic index. The yellow, that's the 60s drought. You can see it in April, even more so than late summer in September. But you can see more of a positive, a wet situation in the 70s and onward compared to the drier years. So we've been very fortunate in that regard that New Jersey has not had a major drought with a drought emergency since about the year 2002 right here. And we've been predominantly on the wet earth side, but notice we can very quickly slip into drought-like conditions in New Jersey. Okay, so that's the past up to present. What about the future? Get out that crystal ball. And to this, we turn to climate models, and they all suggest that temperatures are going to keep rising, both in the next couple of decades and well on into the future. Now, I don't have numbers here. And part of the reason I can't tell you what those numbers are is because of you and me, because what we have for the future depends on how we clean up our atmosphere, stop greening our atmosphere. If we just let global emissions of greenhouse gases run amok, we could warm 8 to 9 degrees Fahrenheit further by the end of this century. We've already warmed a couple of degrees, as we've seen. If we control greenhouse gases better, we may only warm half that amount. Now, we're pretty locked in for till the middle of the century, but what we do now is going to have big ramifications on what the second half of the century is going to look like. So keep that in mind. I know it's a long way away. It used to seem forever away when I was studying this in 1980, in the 1980s. Now, there's plenty of people, including 3 grandchildren of mine, who are going to be around in the year 2100, are going to be experiencing the world that we're providing them now. So not to get too preachy, but there's a real reality to this situation that wasn't so much in the early years of climate modeling when we were looking only 120 years ahead. Now we can look decades ahead, and there's a stark reality. So rising temperatures, steady or increasing precipitation. We've seen evidence of that, already. We don't know how much there. That's a little more uncertain, but all signs point to steady or more increasing precipitation. And then finally, there's more energy in the system. The atmosphere is warmer, the oceans are warmer. And with that, when a trigger arrives, we can have more extremes in terms of flooding, which we've seen recently. Or if the trigger's not there, we're hotter, and that heat can dry things out, and we can't get that moisture out of the atmosphere, so we fall quickly into drought-like conditions. So it can be both ways. This isn't just a cop-out from a climatologist. More extremes. We've seen extremes in temperature, not the extremes here that we saw, say, in the Pacific Northwest in late June and July, when I happened to be on vacation there. But we've seen extremes here. September was the 11th warmest on record. That's kind of a ho-hum because 3/4 of the warmest Septembers since the beginning of the 20th century have all occurred in the last 10 or 15 years. It's just become more commonplace that we're getting warmer and warmer. We're in this together. This isn't just the Highlands. This isn't just New Jersey. Here we have changing annual temperatures and precipitation when we look at the middle of this century versus the end of the last century. This is temperature. Anything colored on this map is going to get warmer. No places are expected to get cooler. And you can see quite a bit of warming here in the Highlands. Precipitation, these are estimates comparing, again, the middle of this current century to the end of the 20th century. And it shows generally wetter in the greens here. So some sign of Jersey could get wetter. Meanwhile, the Southwest, already a desert area, is expected to get drier. And we know the drought that they've been experiencing out there in recent years. So wet, wetter, dry, drier, everyone warmer as we go through to the middle of this century. So what do we do about this? And I don't want to spend a lot of time here. I don't want to get preachy. I'm not a social scientist, but let's just bring up what we do here. Knowledge. Thanks for listening in today, because you hopefully develop a better understanding of the climate system and climate change. And I'll give you a reference in my last slide of where you might want to delve just a little bit further into it. But this is about understanding. This isn't about belief. Don't ask me if I believe in climate change, because you'll get a dirty look from me. This isn't about believing. This is about understanding what's happening to our environment today and what is likely to occur in the future. Am I going to leave you hopeless? No. We can deal with this somewhat. We were smart enough to get ourselves into this trouble through development of the combustion engine and such. I like to think we're going to be smart enough to help us deal with the situation. Notice I didn't say escape it or get out of it. We're kind of in it, and there's no turning back. The residence time of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is centuries. But we can deal with it through mitigative activities. Slow the train, keep things a little bit more under control by reducing emissions, using less energy, cleaner energy. But we're going to have to learn to adapt or become more resilient as well. And there are already efforts underway. And sometimes they're sparked by natural extreme weather events like Sandy or perhaps by Ida. But we're going to learn to be more resilient. And then finally, we just have to play a role. I've heard already today about members of environmental commissions, the wonderful work you do here with the Highlands Coalition. And so on and so forth. They're wonderful land grant and NGOs all over the state. You know, Julia knows I get around here. I spoke to the Northwest Rivers Conference. Last week, it was the gala for the Great Swamp Watershed Association. And I am a trustee of the Nature Conservancy in New Jersey. So I'm a absolute firm believer that through activities and involvement of the community, we can get at this as well. And then very simple, vote. When it comes to voting, look at the candidates' platforms and vote for the platform that you agree with most. And if you're an environmentalist, you're obviously going to look in that direction as well. So enough of that. Summing up, I don't want to read through a whole slide. You know, the Highlands have some wild and wicked weather sometimes. Change is occurring. Change is going to continue to occur and probably accelerate. It's going to impact the hydrologic system of the region for sure. But we can take action to mitigate and adapt to some of these changes. And then totally self-serving here, I can say we need to keep a keen eye on things. And for that, I introduce you to our weather network. There's a station up at the reservoir in Charlottesburg. We have 65 stations around New Jersey where every 5 minutes, the New Jersey Weather Network observes a number of variables, and I invite you to visit njweather.org to look at that. We've got some stations in the Highlands. We need some better stations in the Highlands to replace some that are outdated. Charlotteburg's a real good station, and there are others out there, but if any of you know of good locations and resources to support such a network, I told you this is going to be a self-serving slide. Please give me a yell. And we also have an opportunity for you, and maybe some of you are COCOROS observers. This is a wonderful citizen science network that extends across the US, Canada, and the Bahamas, where we have 300 volunteers in New Jersey, many of whom go out every day, once a day, measure rainfall in a standard gauge in the morning. They get online, enter their data, and this map right here of a very heavy precipitation event that went right up into the Highlands is all based on our volunteer observers. There's no observations in this map from our automated stations. So if you're interested in being a citizen scientist and measuring the precipitation, seeing what you got compared to your neighbor or what someone down in Central Jersey here got or across the country, become a member of COCOROS. And you can become a member and look at the data even if you don't take your own observations, but we'd love to have you part of the program. It's a great way of measuring rainfall, and it's our very best way in the state of gathering snowfall data like you saw earlier in that map. And speaking of that, there's some snowfall obs from a good early March storm back 3 years ago. Both the snow depth and the amount of water in the snowpack measured by some of our observers, which is so very important when we're talking about water resource and flooding issues. So be cuckoo for COCOROS is what the national office, not me, I didn't make that up, have to say. So anyway, I just want to thank you for taking the time to listen to me talk on about the climate system today. If you'd like more information, this is a wonderful, about 50, 60-page document, just updated a year ago, originally produced in 2014 by the Royal Society in cooperation with the US's National Academies of Science. I was a member of the Academy at that point on the Board of Atmospheric Sciences and Climate back in most of the last decade. And we vetted this through. I didn't write it, but got to see it in its and do some editing of it. And it's a wonderful document. This is the document I tell you to bring to Thanksgiving dinner to give your cranky uncle when they question you about climate change. It's not as long as the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, but it's a lot longer than what I've talked about today. And I really would recommend that. You can get it online. Just Google it and you can download it for free. So with that, I will stop. I'll stop sharing my screen. I don't know how much time you have, but I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
First of all, Dave, thank you very much indeed for a wonderful presentation, which is exactly what we expected. So no surprises there. Although I have to say it's absolutely terrifying, the information that you are sharing. So pretty scary stuff. Dr. Bashish has his hand up, and I think he has a question for you. So Ashwani, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you, Julia. Dr. Robinson, thank you so much for that presentation. I've been looking forward to hearing your take on this for quite a while. So it's a pleasure to have seen you present your data so succinctly. My question is twofold. A lot is being made in popular culture today about the year 2030, as highlighted by the IPCC's most recent report. My first question to you is, how much of that is scaremongering and how much of that is actually real? Do we actually have just in 2030 to take action? And my second question is, how can we do it?
So you started with some easy questions.
Yeah, of course. Why would
yeah,
I start with the hard one?
2030, I think, is used in an exemplary sense. There is evidence that if we don't start sharply reducing our greenhouse gas emissions by that time, we'll pass the point where we'll do really great harm to our environment. It doesn't mean that we're going to stop it in 2030. It doesn't mean we have to do everything by 2030, but it's a guide that basically says time is running out to take some major action on this, or we're going to do irreparable damage to our environment. How are we going to do it? We're going to do it from the local to the global scale. The atmosphere and the oceans don't recognize international boundaries. We're all in this together, as I said in the one slide. So it's going to start locally, but it can't all function locally. It's going to have to move to state, national, and international levels. And yeah, a bit of a political, no pun intended, hot potato in some respects. It's been tough being a climatologist the last 30 years. Once people didn't think we were out there mixing drinks or something like that. What's a climatologist? And it's become political. And that's been, and it's been most disturbing when people have turned against science. But I think the corner is turned. I honestly do. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be unanimous, but I think we've turned the corner. Sadly, sometimes it's because we've had these extreme events and climate change staring us right in the face. But other times, I do think there's a growing acceptance that we need to do something. But if we don't do it soon, as I said earlier, the consequences are really going to be felt in the second part of this century and beyond.
Thank you so much for that. If I could just with one small follow-up. If it is true that we need to act, and we have not been acting so far, despite having turned the corner, it is unlikely that inertia is going to go away anytime soon. My question to you is, do you personally have a theory on why it's so hard to get moving action on this issue?
That's why I didn't major in psychology or sociology in college. I prefer inanimate objects, I think. No, I don't. You know, first of all, the better we can make it an apolitical situation, obviously, the better. We're all into this together. And if it takes extreme weather events and their short-term impacts to get people to take action instead of those who recognize the longer-term consequences, so be it. Whatever the means to the end is, may be in some respects, is where I think we have to go. But why not this acceptance? It's just, you know, there are parallels, and I don't want to get into this further, with the whole pandemic and the COVID situation. Apolitical is the way that I think we can best deal with this, but I'm also not Pollyanna here either.
So we have certain protocols in our organization, and the first of them is that the chairman of the board gets to ask his question first.
Okay.
Hey, Mark.
Thank you, Julia. Okay, I'll be brief. And again, thank you, Dr. Robinson, for giving us this presentation. I wondered if you would speak a bit to the issue of carbon sequestration, something that's very, very important to us at the Highlands Coalition. And I wonder if you could talk particularly about the importance of the forests of the Highlands, the forests of the New Jersey pinelands. How important a role do they play in the sequestration of carbon?
Yeah, that's a great question. Not directly in my particular field of study, but there are projects going on in the state now looking at carbon sequestration through soils and through vegetation. I know their white cedars are going to try to be reinstituted better in the pinelands. Just saw that the other day. And the forest, my goodness, the forests of the pinelands, of the Highlands, what a carbon sink they can be. It's so important. I mean, there are all these geoengineering ideas out there now, and there's a plant up in Iceland now, factory or whatever you might call it. I don't want to say it's a green plant, trying to suck carbon out of the atmosphere. It's not cost effective at all right now, and it's on a small scale, but it's a demonstration project. But we're not going to geo-engineer our way completely out of this either. The more we can keep things green and store our carbon in that fashion, all the better. So there's just another reason for protecting our highlands. We mostly think of it as water, I suppose, but I think it's a real important initiative to think of it as this carbon sequestration, this carbon sink.
So we have another trustee who has her hand up, who has a follow-up question on that, I think. Sarah, if you want to unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you for a great presentation. I'm also a scientist, and like you, despaired of the resistance of the public to accepting climate science. I'm also a forest ecologist, and in the midst of this battle with all of the members of this coalition to try to stop our state DEP from making up false information about the value of younger forests for carbon sequestration and carving our oldest, most mature forests apart with clear cutting, which they don't call it, and claiming repeatedly in all the reports and presentations that young forest per acre sequesters more carbon than old forest per acre, which, as I'm sure you know, is not true. So I guess I'm looking for ideas of how to fight this. I mean, you're involved with that, that bureaucracy in a certain sense, in addition to your academic career. And it would be helpful to get your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, you're far more well-versed on this matter than I am, clearly. You know, I think it's just persistence, and I don't mean to make it simple, but, you know, keep presenting the science. There's a science council in DEP. I sit on the council deals with atmospheric climate issues, but it's getting people's ear, getting people the right information, volunteering it, and when asked to participate, volunteering. I don't know how else to get it across, and obviously there's competing factions that DEP has to deal with as well, as they are working to protect our environment, but they also are a regulatory institution or agency, as you well know. So I don't have a magic potion there, but I would just be persistent.
So I think we have one last question here, and it's the person is asking, what is your thinking on the value of carbon credits as a tool for slowing climate change?
See, that's why I didn't become an economist either. You know, carbon tax, carbon credits, to putting a price on carbon, to me, logically makes sense, just as John Q. Public. That would be one way of dealing it. Carbon taxes and other ways they've come up with just seem too complicated. So if that's one way of getting to it, that's the way we do it. I mean, it's going to be through the pocket. You know, we didn't talk coastal issues today because one thing you don't have to worry about for a while is sea level rise, but I've forever said that the insurance industry is going to drive what happens along the coast as sea level rises. And I think we'll see that elsewhere too. So maybe paying for our carbon or our methane for that matter, or who knows what, if we can come up with something that's equitable. And that's a key word today. We need to be environmentally equitable to this situation and make sure that the load is being fairly distributed and not put heavily on the less advantaged, the disadvantaged. So we have to keep that in mind constantly as well.
Dr. Robinson, we are extremely grateful. Thank you very much for a wonderful presentation and a great Q&A. We really hope you'll come back again soon. And it's always wonderful hearing from you.
Absolutely. And keep up the good work, everyone. Thanks so much for all you do.
Thank you very much. So we're now going to move on to a favorite part of the program for me, which is the presentation of our Vision and Leadership Award. This is something that is named after our late trustee, Candy Ashman. And the recipient of this year's Vision and Leadership Award is Mayor Adele Stars of Knowlton. She has big boots to fill, but I think she does it with ease. If you were to Google Delaware Water Gap Rockfall Project, the name Adele Stars comes up over and over and over again, over time, in everything you find. Why? Simply because this mayor has been an extraordinary leader, opposing against tremendous odds, a ridiculous, unnecessary, destructive, quite simply bad, I would say, AKA stupid, road project that will cost the taxpayers of this country an extraordinary amount of money if it were ever to be built. As an example, this from one newspaper account from Upper Mount Bethel in Pennsylvania. Quote, in defiance of the New Jersey Department of Transportation's decision, to keep local public officials from joining a public advisory group over a controversial rockfall mitigation project, representatives from New Jersey and Pennsylvania staged their own group meeting Wednesday night. No, this is not the past Wednesday, but this was a little while ago. Knowlton Township Mayor Adele Stars was joined by 10 representatives from both sides of the Delaware River to discuss their concerns, which they say have gone unaddressed by the DOT about the $64 million project to keep rocks from falling on a 0.31 mile stretch of Interstate 80. This is a project they haven't even proven is necessary. Quote, since 2017, 22 towns have either opposed or asked this project to be substantively changed. And in 3 years, there has not been one single substantive change, Stars said. Quote, they have given presentation after presentation after presentation. We are not talking, we're not asking to be talked at. We have gotten that. We are asking to work together to find a solution for our community. The response DOT provided to this request, Stars said, was the formation of the public advisory group, only to find out that the mayor and her peers in neighboring towns could not participate. In other words, DOT was not inviting them. The mayor, accompanied by I've stopped quoting now, the mayor, accompanied by Mayor Kevin Duffy of Hardwick Township, came to one of our policy committee meetings to listen to NJ DOT try to explain to us the rationale for this project. Every community would be lucky to have as persistent a mayor as Mayor Stars. She has also reached out to her congressman, and I believe at this time, that's Congressman Gottheimer, and I believe at this time the House has recently defunded this project, although the Senate has yet to do so. We believe it is likely to happen as part of Build Back Better. If that ever happens, you've got to keep your fingers crossed. Make calls. Seems to me NJDOT has met their match in Mayor Stars, and we believe she is on the side of the angels here and will succeed. NJDOT is now saying they will do nothing on this rockfall project, although there are others, until they publish the draft EIS, which has not happened yet. When I say there are other rockfall projects. NJDOT has discovered that there is a magic pool of money there in rockfall projects. We support her, we salute her efforts, and we thank her for her stubborn, creative, and inspiring leadership and hard work on this issue. Her effort represents the essence of this award, and we believe she roundly deserves our recognition. One of our trustees, John Donahue, has carried a quote from Calvin Coolidge in his wallet for years that says, "Nothing in the world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not, Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. Persistence and determination, ladies and gentlemen, that's Mayor Adele Stars to a T. Congratulations, Mayor Stars, on this well-deserved award.
Thank you so much. This is my favorite people in the same room together. You know, I don't know if everyone is aware of this, but when I started this with the rock wall, and really even now, I feel that as such a small town, we are just outmatched. We don't have the money, we don't have the resources, we don't have the expertise, we have nothing and are completely outmatched by the NJDOT. And basically, then I reached out and found excellent people like Sergio and John and Julia and Elliot and all these people who are part of your coalition. And it gave us the voice that we just desperately needed and helped us magnify really to everyone what was going on. And I just can't thank you also from a personal level. I've been in my position for, I think, 8 years now on the committee, and no one's ever, you know, recognized me in any way for this. And there's so many days that go by that you think, does it even matter? You know, is it making a difference? Does anyone even care? And it's so just really heartwarming to see that there are people who care, they are following it, and we've got your support, and I genuinely appreciate it.
So congratulations. I just wanted to add a little thing at this point. On a sad note, I want to recognize the passing of our trustee, Marion Harris, who would have been roundly supportive of this award to you, Mayor. She really cared very much about protecting the cultural resources of New Jersey, and the Delaware Water Gap is a really important part of that. While Marion would tell me she didn't believe in going to heaven, I would like to think that she's somehow keeping an eye on this, and I'm sure she is applauding. So this is a nice way to recognize Marion as well.
Julia?
Yes. John.
It's John Trontis. First of all, I must apologize. For some reason, after dozens and dozens of Zoom calls, my Zoom doesn't recognize my camera. So I apologize for the blank screen. But
John, we know it's you because nobody else sounds like you.
yeah, well, sad, happily for them. But here's what I'd like to chime in on this issue. I retired from Parks and Forestry in 2018. And prior to that, I was not allowed, DEP was not allowed to chime in on this issue. So after the fact, let them try to do something to stop me. I just want to thank Mayor Stars, because this is something that directly affects parkland in the state of New Jersey. This is Worthington State Forest, which would have been sliced away, literally sliced away, to support this rockfall project. Totally inappropriate. You know, I've never seen the rockfall block the highway. There was a fence at the bottom that was adequate. But anyway, I was rooting for you the entire time, Mayor Stars, and you and others like you. And so I just want to add something that all of us in the northern region of the State Park Service appreciate your efforts and applaud the coalition for recognizing them.
So now you know there's a whole lot more people who support what you're doing, Mayor. So keep it up until it's got a silver bullet through its heart. So thank you very much. I want to introduce Elliot now, who's going to bring us up to date with some of the things that have been going on in the region in our policy sphere.
Thank you, Julia. I've been having a terrible time sharing screen in the last, I don't know if you've noticed that when I've been trying to show some of the awards that you've been presenting. So I quickly scrambled to get Zach a copy. And if this doesn't work, let me know if you can't see what I'm doing, and we'll move over to Zach. I suspect so far so good. Okay, well,
Yes, it works.
going back 1 year from today, October hit us with a bang. That is when, on October 19th, 4 forestry bills were introduced in the Assembly. And, you know, there's been a controversy around forestry for several years now. We believe that we should be treating our Highlands core forest with ecological restoration and not trying to leverage it for its monetary value. And this came to a head when these bills were introduced, because what these bills served to do was to lock us out from the conversation, lock us out from the opportunity, and that would have institutionalized this way of their way of forestry. And the problem is, I mean, we all come to this for different reasons, but one thing we can all get behind is the fact that there are no regulations in place today for forestry or forest management on public lands. And what the standards that are being used were developed to provide private landowners with tax incentives not to convert their forested land to development. And those should not be the standards by which we manage and manage our most healthy forests. And in the Highlands, we have a 325 square mile core forest, which is one of the most valuable resources we have in this state. So this lit the charge. But other things were going on as well. October 21st, we met with Senator Smith about Highlands appointments, because when soon after Governor Murphy took office, he followed our recommendations and nominated 3 people to the Highlands Council who would be very, very excellent members of the Highlands Council. But because of senatorial advice and consent, particularly the mechanism of senatorial courtesy, 2 of those nominees have been held up, and we've been trying to work on that ever since. The latest was a month ago. I reached out to Senator Gill, who is the last remaining senator holding up the appointment of Winnie Hines. And, you know, a senator has this right of courtesy as a bargaining chip with the governor, with the executive office. And, you know, perhaps rightfully so, because this is, our governor is the most powerful in the nation, and this gives them some leverage. But with this legislative session about to expire, and whatever leverage she has disappears, why don't you just do the right thing and release your courtesy so a very capable resident of Newark, which has never been represented on the Highlands Council, despite owning 35,000 acres of the best quality forest in New Jersey, why don't you just let this move forward? And haven't heard anything. So moving on to November, the Highlands Coalition initiated a strategy of trying to develop relationships with Newark residents to get them to take better advantage of the land they own outside of Newark, here in the Highlands. It's 17 miles away. It's a forest twice the size of the city of Newark itself. And it provides all sorts of benefits to us. Perhaps it could also enhance the lives or the quality of life of the people in Newark if they took advantage of it. But very few people in the city even are aware of its existence. So we began our outreach on November 19th with a program called Civic Story, which is a news forum that is for residents of Newark. We also participated on October 19th in a call for collaboration, which had a discussion with many other groups from Newark, and we got to present our issue, which they're very interested in. And then on June 3rd, the Green New Deal, a program hosted by NJIT in Rutgers. And this is beginning to pan out because we now have a joint program with a Newark organization known as United Parks as One to produce a video of the few people in Newark who actively take advantage of this forest resource and try to bring it to citizens in Newark to better acquaint them and perhaps bring them out to the property and figure out ways that they could take better advantage of this. And it's unfortunate that there is very little transparency of what goes on up in this property. The website has very little information. It is open to recreation, but very few people take advantage of it. So we're trying to correct that. And on February 5th was a milestone because we first met with people from Washington Township who alerted us to what was going on at Roaring Rock Park. And that is probably the worst example of what the current practice of forestry on public land can do. And the Township of Washington in Warren County is using forestry to extract timber, to log, to enhance their municipal budget. And if all municipalities who are having budgetary issues and have forests are going to are encouraged to do the same, we're going to have a lot less quality forest in New Jersey. So we're trying to blow the whistle on that. And this was our first meeting last February to start that whistle blowing. And John Trontis, who you heard from earlier, is a resident in the area, has been very active with us on that. On February 11th, we had our first in the past year of our continuing high-level DEP meetings to reverse Christie-era rollbacks. And when Governor Murphy first took office, his transition team, their primary environmental policy recommendation was to reverse the Christie-era rollbacks to water quality regulations. And this is where we lost the SWRPA in stormwater rules, which protected intermittent streams and headwater type streams, or streams that flow through limestone areas, and several other areas such as water quality the comprehensiveness of water quality management plan regulations were rolled back during the Christie era, and yet they're still on the books under what we thought would be a very environmentally conscientious governor. And we had brought this up to, at the time, Commissioner McCabe, and she was willing to meet with us. And I reached out to Doug O'Malley at Environment New Jersey, Mike Pissarro at the Watershed Institute, and Alan Hunt at Musconetcong Watershed Association. And we have been meeting regularly with Vince Mazzei and Katie Angarone on the deputy and assistant commissioner level. And they've been very appreciative appreciative of the information we've been giving them, pointing out where they can make some um, improvements. But after over a year, we haven't seen any proposals for rule changes. So we're continuing to meet with them. They appreciate the dialogue, but we really like to see some rules proposed. In March, we filed an amicus in support of DEP on their the challenge to their 600 miles of C1 upgrades throughout the state. About half of them are in the Highlands, and the county of Hunterdon and the Raritan Township MUA filed an appeal in at an appellate court challenging the validity of the science for those upgrades. And we are very quick to criticize the department when we feel they're not being protective enough. So when they do the right thing, if we have an opportunity to support them, we will. So on March 8th, with the represented by Eastern Environmental Law Center and the Watershed Institute and Raritan Headwaters Association as co-appellants, we filed this amicus. And since that time, they've been the county of Hunterdon and Raritan Township have been challenging our amicus, whether we should be even allowed to file an amicus. So we have not gotten to the point of oral arguments. It may take a while to get there, but we are engaged in this process. On March 8th, I gave a presentation at DEP at their DEP's HABS Summit, which was an all-day series of presentations about harmful algal blooms. And we are concerned that where HABs are caused by local land use decisions, that the local communities have to take some responsibility financially, whether it's a stormwater utility or whatever it is. But it seems like there is this habitual expectation that the state is going to provide the funding to correct the situation with HABs. And the state does not have enough money to correct these problems throughout the state. So the current strategy of every year going with your hat in your hand to the state for a few $100,000 to get you through the next, for a couple of projects, we will never solve the problem with HABs until there is cooperation on the municipal, regional, and state level simultaneously and taking some responsibility. So this was our first opportunity to make our policies about this known. And on March 15th, we contracted with a production company, Plug-in Digital Media, to produce a series of forestry videos. We did one short format one to make a call to action for people to reach out to their legislators so that legislators can get a better understanding of the proposed forestry bills. But more importantly, we're very close to releasing a 10-minute video about our forestry principles, which we are all very proud of. It's very moving. I think it's going to make a tremendous impact throughout the state. And we should be able to show that in the next couple weeks or so. It's almost complete. On April 21st, I testified at the Senate Environment Committee regarding the forestry bills. Senator Bob Smith, who's chairman of the Senate Environment Committee, had a hearing as he decided that he was going to sponsor the Senate companions to the Assembly bills. And what he has done he has taken them over. I believe he's going to let the Assembly bills die or expire at the end of this legislative session in January. And he is working on his own bill, a single bill to address forestry on forest management on public lands, which is exactly what we need. But we have to make sure that he's following the principles of ecological restoration. And we are having a dialogue with him. He invited us to propose a bill, or bill language, which we have done. He has a series of our principles, and we're also working with the governor's office because now is the time. This issue has come to a head, and we're doing our advocacy best. And on May 7th, we met with the governor's office to discuss the forestry principles that we see, which are based on ecological restoration, rather than what is going on, the practice right now. And we think we have a sympathetic ear. We can't always be sure of that, but that's the indications we are getting. Some other things that were going on at this time, I testified at the Senate Environment Committee on solar siting. Where is it appropriate to site utility grade solar projects, of 50 to up 100 acres? And we don't want to see our prime farm soils in the Highlands or our forests being sacrificed for solar. We've spent the past 50 years protecting our forests. What for? We're going to cut them down to put in solar. We think so far we've succeeded in getting the preservation area exempted from forestry or from solar siting. However, most of the farmland in the Highlands is in the planning area. And unfortunately, they've made no provisions for using the Highlands Council's farm resource area mapping, which would have been appropriate. And we're still working on that. What is unfortunate is that the Highlands Council has some very good mapping, but they would not comment with this legislation to try to improve the language of it. And also, there was a very good bill that was introduced in May by Senator Sweeney to require, when a new warehouse is proposed, that the surrounding municipalities would have an opportunity to object and could actually stop a warehouse development if it felt it was going to have a negative impact on their primary quality of life issues. We testified in support of this bill, but the bill was significantly amended and weakened, and what was passed is not as strong as we would like to have seen. On June 4th, we posted on our YouTube channel the documentary, The Way of the Ramapo. We've had 2 showings of the film outside. The most recent one this past Sunday at Rutherford Hall. 100 people showed up despite the crummy weather. And Chief Mann came to do a drum ceremony, and then participated with me in a Q&A. And Must Connect on Watershed and the Nature Conservancy both partnered with us. It was a very nice event. Right now, we have over 1,000 views of this on our YouTube channel. Why are we working so closely with the Ramapola Napi tribe? Well, our mission is to advocate for the protection of the Highlands' natural and cultural resources. They are probably one of the most significant cultural resources we have, and their relationship with the land, they're something that they can teach. They have a lot more to teach us than we have to them. And as a people who are close to the earth, we can learn a lot from them. And I know I have in the production of this video. And now that Chief Mann is a trustee of ours, I think our relationship with the Turtle Clan is going to certainly enhance all of our lives. And we need to listen to them and understand what their needs are, because they've certainly had challenges since the first contact in 1620. They've been massacred here in New Jersey, several occasions. They've been forced out of their land, and there are a few families who stayed behind in the hinterlands, such as the Ramapo Mountains. And those are the ones who are here today, and they are the native people of the Highlands. Furthering our work on HABs and advocating for stormwater utilities, I was interviewed with Bill Kibler of Raritan Headwaters that made it to a feature segment on NJ TV on June 14th at Round Valley Reservoir, where they had closed the entire reservoir for primary contact recreation, swimming, for the entire summer due to HABs. On July 9th, the governor signed the solar siting criteria for BPU that we felt was much weakened. We don't feel it's going to do much to stop the proliferation of warehouses. And on July 26th, we had a very productive meeting with Senator Smith about ecological restoration and of our forests through a different type of forest management that is currently going on. And we had a statement of principles. And I think he very much appreciated what we had to say. He was not aware of what was going on at Roaring Rock, very upsetting to him. And he agrees that anything that he says he's going to propose is not going to allow logging on public land. But it's yet to be seen what that actually means, but we're going to continue to work with him. We know that his attention right now is on a series of energy bills that he will be introducing during lame duck. So we have some time to work with him on forestry, so that after the election and after lame duck, when he's ready to propose something, he may have the right bill that we'd like to see. Finally, on August 4th, the Land and Water Conservation Fund, which is federal funding which includes the Highlands Conservation Act, which is is now a permanent source of funding to acquire land and easements in the Highlands. And this, if you don't mind my spelling of permanently, this is a program that is distributed by the Highlands Council, part of their Highlands protection funding for projects that are going on in the Highlands. And something to celebrate, on September 27th, Penn East finally realized that they were throwing good money after a bad project and withdrew the Penn East project from the docket. But this is not all we do. There are 4 bad projects that are still in various states of permitting in the Highlands. None of these could move forward if it wasn't for the rollbacks by the Christie administration. And this is a point we have made with DEP. The 4 projects are Millie's Port in Franklin Borough in Sussex County, which is 250 units of housing in the Wallkill River Valley at the foot of Hamburg and Sparta Mountains, adjacent to, that includes a natural heritage priority site. Right now, there are wetlands and flood hazard area permits are pending. We are waiting for them to propose to amend the area, the Sussex County WQMP. We are working with Princeton Hydro and Eastern Environmental Law Center. We have quite a team. We have met with Vince Mazzei at DEP about our problems, and we most recently met with the head of U.S. Fish and Wildlife, who agrees with us that there are 18 identified species, threatened endangered species on this site, including federally endangered bog turtle, and they have some real problems that they were not aware of by their communications with the town and the applicant. So we're feeling good about that. You've heard about the Jandal warehouse in White Township. That right now is under site plan review at the White Township Planning Board. We awarded some people who tonight were very active in that fight with us. All of these are going to take a long time if they're ever going to be approved. Haberman at Hampton, pending their WQMP amendment. DEP is supposed to rule on a WQMP amendment within a year. It's been almost 2 years, and they have not approved or denied the Haberman amendment yet. And there were over 200 people who showed up at that public hearing in opposition to Haberman. And again, we're working with Princeton Hydro. Musconetcong Watershed Association is quite engaged in this. And then there's the Berlant warehouse a little further south on the Musconetcong River. And there's an issue there with an intermittent stream that clearly would have been regulated under stormwater regulations and wetlands regulations prior to Christie's rollbacks. And right now they're in court about that. So those are the 4 big single projects. And that's been quite a year in policy in the Highlands. And
thank you very much, Elliot.
You're welcome. And
really appreciate it.
Going back to you, Julia, we have another award to give.
Yes, indeed. It's exhausting thinking about all the things we've done over the last year. Anyway, I am very excited to share every year we give Wilma some awards to volunteers who are active in the Highlands in the name and in recognition of Wilma Fry, who many people know. Wilma had an amazing ability to get people to volunteer and to get involved. And so today we're going to recognize people from two different groups, grassroots groups that have been extremely active over the past year. The first group is Save Roaring Rock Park. And I know we have a couple of representatives from there. One could not stay with us for work reasons. His name is Chris Vitalos, who is from Washington Borough, but we do have Laura Altman, who is here, and we do have Sarah Hare, who is here, I believe. And I just want to say to them, you are doing an amazing job. They are the absolute quintessential example of what happens when a group of motivated, smart people get together and pool their talents. And it is incredible what they can get done. So we want to recognize the Save Roaring Rock Park. I know that Chris and Sarah and Laura insist that they are just representing the group. But I don't know if you want to say anything, Laura, but congratulations on all the work that you are doing.
Thank you. I do want to say Chris is actually here.
Oh, good.
He got off his phone, his Zoom meeting.
Yeah.
I'll say I've known Wilma for like over 30 years in a number of settings. And one reason that she got people, non-professionals to help is that she helped them. And she shows up. She shows up at the meeting, at the land use board meeting, or and she wrote stuff, and like she has an incredibly accurate moral compass, and her credibility is unarguable when she gets up in front of a municipal government. So they can't say she's wrong. And I hope that we could only be at least as partly as credible as Wilma Fry always has been, and she's helped this group even now, even quite recently. And I would say
she's living in Massachusetts right now.
Right, even though she's living in Massachusetts, she's still contributed a lot to this struggle against this stupid logging plan. And I would say another reason that this group is so active is because everybody recognizes what's right. And I think people in the community recognize what's right and wrong about the situation, and everyone would do it regardless of the help of anybody else. I mean, people would do it because it's the right thing to do, but we certainly do appreciate the help and support of the Highlands Coalition, which has been great for organizing the group, and I think giving people a feeling that they're not alone. As Adele Stars mentioned, that sometimes you could feel kind of cast adrift and maybe nobody cares about this issue, and actually a lot of people do. So thank you.
I don't know if Chris or Sarah, if you'd like to say anything. Chris, I see you there, and Sarah, I see you there.
Chris? I know Chris wanted to say something. I would just like to say, I am, this is a group effort, Julia, as you said, and Laura, she brings a passion and intelligence to this effort, and I'm so proud to be working alongside you, Laura, and Chris with his technical expertise. I mean, his technological expertise, and just really key to getting the word out there about this effort. I did want to say that, there are others in this group who are working as hard. I'm just a foot soldier, and they have been there, right along. So I'd just like to mention there's someone who I would have said is anonymous and done a great deal of work, but since he's already been mentioned here, I would just like to put a call out for John Trontis, and also recognize George Casa and the work he's been doing and speaking up, attending township committee meetings, and really speaking in support of Category 1 Brass Castle Creek and the wild trout. And we couldn't do this work without him right now with his expertise. And just to recognize James Esposito, his wife Kate, and their children. Just a model family who are actively involved. You may be hearing them on WRNJ very soon. James has been very courageous in speaking up at township committee meetings and really in the forefront now, very active. And also my dear friend Betsy McKinnon, who knows Roaring Rock Park intimately, really, she has been hiking there for decades. And it's her love and passion that really got me really actively involved in this, along with you, Julia, speaking at Citizens about it. But I think we need to recognize all of our efforts and that we are working as a team. And, of course, thank you to Cindy McGonigal and Sarah Webb and Wilma Fry for offering their wisdom from the very beginning in this effort. So thank you so much.
And
Chris?
this is Chris. This is Chris. Do people hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I share all of I recognize all the comments that Laura and Sarah just gave. It's really exciting to be part of Save Roaring Rock Park. When I first joined signed on to this group maybe a few months ago at Sarah's suggestion, I really come to value the volunteers and their dedication and their enthusiasm and what they bring to the table here to save what is a very beautiful place. I come to value the Highlands Coalition and their staff and the resources they bring and the expertise that they bring. Certainly the ecological resources and knowledge that I certainly lack. So I found out a place where I could plug in and add value. But I want to say that if you are traveling through Warren County, spend some time at Roaring Rock Park. It is a very, very special place. It has the C1 Brass Castle Stream, which hosts native fish population, has very challenging hiking trails. It has historical features in ruin that are quite remarkable. It's a very challenging hike too. It'll take you maybe an hour plus to get through it all. And when you go through it, especially at this time of year, as we get into peak color during the autumn season, you realize very quickly why it deserves preservation and it deserves protection. And I thank everybody again.
Thank you very much, Chris. John, I don't know. I see you've unmuted yourself. I don't know if you wanted to say something.
Well, sure. 10 years ago, we bought one of 3 houses totally surrounded by Roaring Rock Park. For a park guy who started in the field of parks and recreation 41 years ago as a park naturalist, it's like living in heaven. It was until the chainsaws and skid steers started ripping down the woods. I was very critical and spoke at several township meetings. And I wanted to make it abundantly clear to them that mine was not a NIMBY situation. Just because the park surrounded my home, I spoke for the trees. I've become the Lorax. And finally, I wrote an op-ed that was not, let's just say it was not embraced by the township officials. But pardon my language, but screw them. I wanted to make my point abundantly clear. And the folks, I am not a part of SaveRoaringRockPark.org, but they have taken my op-ed and and published it. And so good for them. I want to thank them for being allies in this, because the Espositos and I were like, man of La Mancha fighting a windmill. but they came to the rescue. And thank you for recognizing that organization. Technically, I'm not part of it, but technically my heart is there. So thank you, and thanks to the coalition for this recognition.
Thank you. I think you guys made the case perfectly for why we're recognizing you. It's very easy to see. So congratulations to you. The other group that we're recognizing is a smaller group who have taken on what seems like an impossible situation, but they are trying to prevent 600 acres of prime farmland soils from being covered by solar panels, by a solar power plant. The people we particularly named, who also said that they couldn't accept this just in their own, for themselves, are Richard Dalrymple of Harmony and Manny Escalera of Harmony Township. But we are fortunate to have here today, and now that neither of them can be here, Manny because he's running for office in that town, and Richard and his wife are in Iceland on a long delayed vacation. But we do have Linda and Butch Fansettas with us, and I think Linda is going to say something. Linda, please.
Just want to thank the Highlands Coalition, everyone there. We've gotten to know some great people that are trying to do the best they can for our state. We love the outdoors. We love harmony. We'd like to keep harmony in harmony. The farmland is beautiful. People need to eat. People live there. They've lived around this land, 600 acres of land, some of them for their whole lives. Some of them moved to Harmony just because it's such a beautiful place to be. And we are trying to protect that. We're not against solar at all. We know that it is something that can be used for good, but don't take farmlands away that can never, ever be returned to what they were. And Butch would like to
So
say
yes, these farmlands are some of the most fertile in New Jersey. Almost 200, what's one of the saddest parts is about this, almost 200 acres is owned by our township. And the township is pushing as hard as they can to have this covered with solar panels for a very, very small amount of money that would save the taxpayers. It's incredible. I mean, it's just a township mayor and committee would try to destroy 600 acres on their township property, 200 I want on their property, to save, I think, $250 a year on each house. And it's just, you know, I just can't believe it. So, you know, Manny and Richard are at the head of this, and we're just proud to sit here and accept this for them.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you and congratulations. It's well deserved. I'm sorry you're having to fight this fight. So I'm now going to turn this over to Elliot, who is going to recognize somebody else.
Thank you, Julia. In 2012, we were invited by the William Penn Foundation to participate in their new Delaware River Watershed Initiative in the Highlands region, one of their 8 focus areas of projects to improve water quality in the Delaware River. And there were 11 other partners in this Highlands cluster, which they called it. And Julia and I came up with a project based around the Lepacon Creek and its watershed, which is a direct tributary to the Delaware River. It runs only 10 miles, and its watershed, which 6 municipalities share land in western Warren County, and it's about 25 square miles. It's of the size that if you can do some good projects, you can measure the effectiveness of your work. Also, it is almost an ideal, equally divided by forested headwaters, suburbs, agriculture, and urban, which is Phillipsburg. And Julia and I had to find somebody who could manage this program called the Lepacon Creek Initiative. And we heard about this woman, Juniper Leifer, who was a transplant from Brooklyn, who came out to this western part of New Jersey, which is more like Pennsylvania than New Jersey. And she had energized the entire community to oppose this inappropriate asphalt plant that was proposed in Lepacon Township, where she lived. And this part of Warren County, there are few families that run the show. It doesn't matter what town you're in. It doesn't matter what political stripe you are. But you don't run afoul of these people because they really have their hand in everything. And this was someone who had the guts to do that. And we were impressed that she was able to fill the Lepacon Middle School with residents for 3 nights in a row as they were having their hearings on this asphalt plant. So Juniper took this job, and she really, we work with a lot of scientists, engineers, technical people, people who are experienced doing boots on the ground projects. This is out of Juniper's element. But she very quickly figured out the lay of the land, figured out the technology, figured out the people, and it's as if she was doing this forever. And she has created a watershed ethic in this most unlikely place to have a watershed ethic in New Jersey, in one of the most politically conservative places. And I mean, to the point where if somebody saw some cloudy water in the Lepacon Creek, they'd call Juniper, and even the mayor would do that. She was well known, she was well trusted, she trained a cadre of citizen scientists, and she has created an incredible legacy for her successor, Joe Hernandez. And my heart goes out to her because, particularly during the past year and a half, during the pandemic, where all of our meetings were virtual, and Juniper had 3 teenagers at home, plus a husband, and I'm very sympathetic to what she had to get through, but she always got the job done. And here I am, I was her direct supervisor, and I've always been super busy out here in our offices in Boonton, and suddenly I realize I haven't spoken to Juniper in a month. What's going on? And I give her a call. We get together at the Panera Bread on Route 22 in Greenwich or whatever that is, and she had everything under control. She was doing a great job. But she and her husband and her family bought a house outside of Lepacon Creek, outside of Warren County, and she decided it was her time to move on. So we're awarding her today the Above and Beyond Award for building an unprecedented watershed ethic with an aim to improve water quality in a vulnerable limestone underlain direct tributary of the Delaware River by successfully building partnerships with residents, schools, municipal and county officials, community groups, and environmental and conservation NGOs, and leaving a legacy for her successor to build upon. So Juniper, with thanks and great appreciation from all who love and value the natural and cultural resources of the New Jersey Highlands. And I hope you're still with us. Might have a couple words to say, Juniper?
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you so much, Elliot. I really appreciate that. That was awfully kind of you. I will say, like everybody else who has already spoken, I'm quite used to being a squeaky wheel, but not particularly used to getting the oil. So I very much appreciate the recognition. Also, I want to just put out there that when we did get started early on and we were fighting off that asphalt plant in Lopatcong, I too had an entire team of people who worked with me. So I certainly can't take all the credit for that. But I am glad that I'm the person that you guys remembered and plucked out of that world to be a part of your world. Because working with the New Jersey Highlands Coalition and running the Lopatcong Creek Initiative was generally one of the highlights of my life. Being at this meeting today and hearing all about the amazing work that you continue to do is just a reminder of what a proud experience it was to work with you guys. So thank you all so much. I genuinely appreciate it. Keep on keeping on. I'm so proud of all that you do, and I will continue to be supporting you all the way.
Always knows the right thing to do, the right thing to say. Thank you, Juniper. We miss you. So Joe, you got big shoes to fill.
And I believe next, we're throwing it to Mike Keaty for small grants.
Yes.
Mike?
Indeed. I've been doing this, heading up the Small Grants Committee for the past few years. I have to say it's about the most pleasant thing that we get to do in the coalition because it's all good. And we do identify a lot of groups out there who are dealing with emerging issues. So I'm going to, we got an excellent bunch of applications this year, and that's in the spring. And we had meetings in July and then again in August, the final decision meeting. And we have 8 award presentations today with these 8 groups that we selected as the recipients for the Highlands Small Grants. And we'd like to see, if any of you are on this, we'd love to see you. So I'll ask you to unmute. And as you know, the way Zoom works, if you make some noise and of some sort, your picture will suddenly appear in the middle. And for those of you watching, if you click on the view in the upper right corner, you've got a choice there between speaker and gallery. If you click on speaker, they come up big, whoever these people are to whom we've never seen them. So it will be a surprise to us too. And I'm just going to do this in alphabetical order. And the first is the letter C. The first recipient is the Citizens for Sustainable Development. They're the group you've heard a lot about already, who are opposing the warehouse on prime farmlands in White Township in Warren County. Someone here from that group?
That's Linda and Butch.
Hello.
There you go.
Oh, I'm sorry, Butch had to leave. Thank you so much. We appreciate everything you did for us, you've done for us, financial help. We just couldn't proceed without the New Jersey Highlands Coalition. Thank you.
So their award is going to be used to help pay the lawyer that is representing us, because the Richard Dalrymple, Manny Escalera, and the New Jersey Highlands Coalition have challenged that land use board decision. And anybody who wants to make a donation to help them, we really need all the help we can get. So please consider making a donation to the Citizens for Sustainable Development at the New Jersey Highlands Coalition. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Thank you.
The second Small Grants Award goes to the Harmony Citizens for Sustainable Development, who've been fighting the loss of the...
Mike,
yeah.
that was them.
Well,
So sorry, then the other one is the White Township group.
Is the White Township one, yeah.
I think Teresa might be here.
Is anyone here? Oh, no, there she is.
Hi, yeah. Linda and I work together on both groups, so I was fine with her accepting the reward or the award on our behalf. But we're going into our 3rd year of fighting this warehouse development. We could not have done it without the Highlands Coalition. George, we miss you. So thank you very much. And we are going to continue this battle.
I apologize for mixing them up, Mike.
I had them right on my list, so.
Yes,
I want
you
that
have
to
it the right way around.
And let me say something about persistence and a lesson that I hope everybody took last week. I live in Holland Township, where the Penn East pipeline was proposed to come across the Delaware River from PA and make its landing into New Jersey and pollute both sides of the river. And after 7 years, talk about persistence of fighting, and you have read in the paper certainly about how all the 70% of the people on the route in New Jersey did not allow Penn East representatives to come on their land and to get any of the information that they needed in order to get DEP permits. And a little over a week ago, they gave up. So 7 years of people's lives, but we're having a big celebration down at in Stockton on Sunday. The next recipient of the small grant is the Mawa Environmental Volunteers Organization. Anyone here from that group?
Hi.
Oh, hi.
Yeah, I am. Hi. Hi, hello. Yeah, thank you so much for the grant. It's a huge help. And we're using the grant to help stop illegal dumping and pull out illegal dumping from Stag Hill, which is in the preserved forest of the Highlands. And on the day I heard that we received the grant, I was actually lamenting to a staff member, like, we need $5,000 more in order to continue this work into the next season. And literally that evening I received the grant. So it was such a synchronicity, and we're so appreciative.
Well, we not only have, you do want to do good, we're also very friendly.
Yeah.
Thank you. And the next recipient is the Passaic River Coalition, which is doing a cultural project to highlight and explain the stones landscapes built by the Ramapo tribe and the Turtle Clan, and they'll be working together closely with the Indigenous Peoples Group.
Yes, and yes, I'm Lori Howard. I'm the executive director, and we see this. Our intention for this project is really to be a model for further identification of Native American stone formations and culture in the Highlands. And it actually came about when Elliot said how the Turtle Clan teaches us. A volunteer from the tribe came to our cleanup at Federal Hill a few months ago, and she pointed out the stone formations, which we really didn't know. No one knew that they were significant at all. And that's really why we came with this idea to do this. So we hope it'll be a model to do in other lands in the Highlands. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Lori.
Thanks.
And you know, there's been this feeling sometimes that the Highlands Council itself has ignored some of the implications toward responsibility for protecting the cultural environment as well as the natural environment. So we're happy to see awards going to projects such as this. The next recipient of a small grant is the Save Roaring Rock Park group, and we've seen, if we've seen about everybody, it seems like we will, from that group, you've been hearing a lot about it today. Is there anybody who wants to say anything?
Well, I'll say thank you. I'm sure we'll be able to find something to do with that money, but I think we have a lawn sign campaign, and we are gonna put on some radio ads, and yeah, so, well, we're trying to make sure that people in the Washington Township know what's going on, really understand it, and put a lot of pressure on their elected officials. That's actually the shortest route to something happening good there, something positive, and we're chipping away at their stupid plan bit by bit. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Laura. The next recipient of the small grant is the Skylands Preservation Alliance. This is for continuing their legal battles against warehouses, sound familiar, on farmland, very familiar, next to the Musconetcong River in Franklin Township in Warren County and Bloomsbury in Hunterdon County. Anybody here from Skylands Preservation Alliance?
I don't think they're represented here today. Tracy Heisler would have been here if she could have, but this is something they have been opposing for some time, and they've been doing an incredible job. So we're really grateful for the work that they're doing. And this is really, they also are working with the Eastern Environmental Law Center, another nonprofit organization that deserves people's support. And they're doing great work, and we wish them the very best.
They're also a group that's been around for a few years. They're not newly sprung up out of the ground. The next recipient is the Union Forge Heritage Association, another cultural grant to erect signs alerting visitors to existing resources near Spruce Run Reservoir. And I saw Bill, oh, there's Bill Oniszewski. Hi, Bill. Say something and you'll get big.
Bill, you have to unmute yourself. There you go.
That's better. Yeah, hey guys, I just wanted to thank the Highlands Coalition. I'm out here off the shores of Spruce Run Reservoir, actually the site of the original Union furnaces. As you all know, my father was very active involved with the environment. I hope to continue that. And I just wanted to accept this award, not on my behalf, but other members, Mike Gronsky, Sue Hackey, Jane Kucinich, Elaine Powers, Adrian Schiffs, and other members of the organization. We've been around for 20 years, and there's always a constant battle to preserve and protect the natural heritage and natural environment of, not only Hunter County, but New Jersey. It's a constant battle. And every one of these awardees, every one of the members with the Highlands Coalition, I've been kind of doing this for 20 years, and everybody's all on the same board, and it's a constant fight. And all we can do is continue it and, keep the pressure on, because what Margaret Mead said it perfectly. And, I think we all agree with that. But for this award will go right to, for signage for our museum and the natural heritage, to increase visibility for the museum along Spruce Run Reservoir, which is highly needed right now. But I appreciate the award on behalf of the organization, Union Forge Heritage Association. And on my behalf, I appreciate it. And I'll see all you guys soon in some way or another. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Bill. And let's hope maybe you started a new tradition here where the winners appear next to the environmental resource that they're trying to protect. And the last of the 8 winners this year for the small grants is the Wallkill Headwaters Association. And they're the group that's opposing Millie's Court that's been going on forever. It's a development that threatens endangered species and a prime groundwater recharge area. Anyone from Wallkill Headwaters here?
Ian Sherwood would have been here, and unfortunately he has to work. But this too will help support professional fees, primarily the environmental work that is being done by Princeton Hydro in support of their efforts.
Thanks for the explanation, Julia. And that is sadly, we wish we could give out another 8, but the funds are limited. So I'll toss it back to Julia.
Thank you very much, Mike. So you should know that we raise these funds every year. Most of it is raised from our bottom line, from donations from individuals like people who are supporting us here today. So this is really a team effort. I'm going to turn it over to Mark, who is going to introduce the election of the new trustees.
Thank you, Julia. Yes, we have one important item of business on our agenda, and that is the election of trustees. The floor is now open to nominations. I want to tell you all before we entertain any nominations that the Board Governance Committee meets during the year in large part to identify appropriate candidates for the board. And we have done so. We've made a recommendation to the full board. And those nominees are attached to your agenda. I'd like to briefly go through the names of the nominees with you right now. So we have 4 people that we're recommending be elected to their first 3-year term. Jessica Murphy, who is the former executive director of the Laco Patcon Foundation, is one. Laura Altman, whom we've heard from this afternoon. Congratulations, Laura, on your awards. She's obviously, as you know, with Save Roaring Rock Park. Then Sergio Moncada, who is with the National Park Service Foundation. And finally, Ashwani Vashith of Ramapo College. And he had some interesting questions for Dr. Robinson today. So those are the 4 nominees the committee is suggesting for their for election to their first 3-year term. Then to a second 3-year term, we're recommending the re-election of Jan Barry, Ben Burton, Bill Cogger, and Ben Spinelli. And then finally, to be elected as officers to the organization to fill 2 vacancies that we have. For second vice president, we're recommending John Donahue, and for secretary, Mike Keaty. All right, so those are the recommended nominations. Are there any other nominations from the floor? All right, hearing none, I'll close the nominations and I'll ask for a vote. All in favor of the nominees that have been proposed by the Board Governance Committee, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right. Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Okay, thank you very much. We had a unanimous vote in favor of our slate of candidates. And to those newly elected officials, I want to give you our congratulations and best wishes for a great year ahead. And thank you very much for running. And with that, I'll turn it back to Julia for the final portion of the program. Go ahead.
I just want, you're probably thinking, oh my goodness, when is this ever going to end? But I just wanted to say a couple of things. We have 2 people who our bylaws require them to rotate off the board. They have both served, well, in Sandy Batty's case, our trustees can serve 2 consecutive 3-year terms and then they must go off the board. Sandy has done this twice. So, and during that time, so that's a total of 12 years, but this time, most recently, 6 years. During her 12 years, she has served as our president of the chairman of the board for 8 years. I mean, she has really had an incredible impact on the New Jersey Highlands, and she has helped make this organization what it is. We are very sad to see her go off the board. However, we have this sneaky way of keeping people involved because they can still serve on committees, and then after a year off the board, we can ask them to come back. So I don't know if she's really, she of course can say no, but I'm sure we will be going and asking her if she would like to return to the board in a year. The second person I want to recognize, who similarly has served a long time on our board, is Ned Kirby. We cheated with Ned. Our bylaws allow an officer to complete their 2-year term. So we've actually had him on the board for 7 consecutive years. I think he kept wondering, when is my term up? Anyway, we're going to lose Ned. He chaired our development committee, but he's going to continue to serve on the development committee. And he too, I'm sure we'll be asking him to return in a year's time, but he does get some relief. He doesn't have to attend board meetings anymore. But they've both done an incredible job. Ned was an amazing development committee chair, and he's also served as an officer. So both of them with deep thanks from everybody in the New Jersey Highlands Coalition. And then the last thing I wanted to do is our bylaws require us to accept the organizations by vote that have joined the New Jersey Highlands Coalition since the last annual meeting. And this year, that is Friends of Greendale Marsh Ecological Preserve, Grounds for Sculpture, Friends of New Jersey School of Conservation, Neighbors for Responsible Development, United Parks as One, Save Roaring Rock Park, New Jersey League of Conservation Voters, Citizens for Sustainable Development Harmony, and New Directions in the American Landscape. So I'm looking for somebody to
hear a nomination from a trustee, or rather a motion from a trustee accepting these organizations into the coalition.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, they are admitted. Thank you, Julian.
You all get a prize for still being here. Thank you very much indeed. We deeply appreciate your participation and attending the 2021 annual meeting. We hope you will stay in touch with us. We count on your support all the time. And I hope you go and get a stiff drink and thoroughly celebrate the New Jersey Highlands Coalition's activities over the last year and look forward to the next 12 months. Thank you very much indeed for all your support. We can't do it without you. There's no I in team.
Julian.
We're all on the team. Thank you.
Congratulations all. Thank you very much to the staff. Thanks again to Marion Harris and her family for all the years she devoted to us. And thank you all for hanging in today. Have a good one. Bye-bye.